What is going on, full-time family? We've got some fights to talk about. UFC 240 went down last night. It was headlined, of course, by Blessed Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, and the co-main event was Cris Cyborg versus the Phenom Felicia Spencer. Cris Cyborg was fighting in the last fight of her UFC contract in this fight, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes with Cyborg. Cyborg, of course, being in the last fight of her contract, has been looking to renegotiate with the UFC, but she feels like she's been getting lowballed. She feels like she's not getting enough money in her contract negotiations, and so she decided to not yet resign with the UFC and fight out her last fight. Now, with that being said, this puts us with a lot to talk about for the way this fight played out, for what's next for Cris Cyborg. I mean, so we're going to break it all down here. We're even going to, of course, talk a little bit about Kayla Harrison, because what we seen from Cris Cyborg last night, she's definitely human. I don't know if Cris Cyborg can beat Amanda Nunes, and I definitely believe Kayla Harrison can beat Cris Cyborg. It is possible. If it was a kickboxing match, no. But we'll talk about that at the end of the fight. Felicia Spencer is only 7-0 as a professional. I got her record up right here. And just 3 fights ago, she was fighting a girl that was a 0-0. So Felicia Spencer is relatively new to mixed martial arts as a professional. She's got one before Cyborg last night, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pro fights. So she was only 7-0. A lot of people, I almost have to get into the Kayla Harrison conversation now just because the similarities. Felicia Spencer is a grappler, more of a submission specialist. You can see here on her record, she's won 4 of her 7 fights via rear naked choke. So she's definitely more of a grappler. That's how she finishes girls. And in this fight, she cut Cris Cyborg, though, in the first minute. It was a really nice elbow that was placed, and it left a nasty gash on Cyborg's head throughout the fight that she was bleeding through. And so, with that being said, she continued throughout the fight to land shots. She wasn't able to get a takedown, but she continued to land shots, counter shots. Cyborg outlanded her, of course, being the way more experienced striker, and she also had a lot more power in there, which is why I don't believe Cyborg can beat Amanda Nunes, because Cyborg hasn't really fought girls with the power of Amanda Nunes. There's just not many out there. Cyborg's been fighting a lot of bantamweights in the UFC, girls coming up from 135 pounds, and that's just because there's no girls that weigh 145 pounds that are legitimate enough for Cyborg to fight or the UFC to sign. The one that they tried was Megan Anderson. She got embarrassed before she could even make it to Cyborg fight. So now they had, Amanda Nunes, and they have Felicia Spencer. Well, this time, Felicia Spencer came in there as a legitimate 145-pound fighter, and you could see it. I mean, it showed in her chin. A lot of the bantamweight Cyborg fights, they weathered to her shots. But Felicia Spencer, she was able to take all of those shots. She was able to clinch up with Cris Cyborg, control her in the clinch for moments throughout the fight, which you got to imagine if Felicia Spencer can control Cyborg in the clinch, being a smaller 145er than Kayla Harrison, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 155-pounder. I'm just saying, man, there's levels to this. Kayla Harrison is way stronger, way better grappling, and she's been training with the American Top Team. Clearly, you don't have to have elite striking to touch Cris Cyborg, because Felicia Spencer does not have elite striking, and clearly Cyborg's not just going to knock out anybody she punches. So Cyborg's going to have to knock out Kayla Harrison, and we don't even know if she can do that because she's got the size to eat those shots. Joe Rogan said something during the commentary of the fight about Cris Cyborg. Maybe it's the weight cut to 145. Maybe that's what's affecting Cyborg. I don't think that's the case. And if it is, then that would be all the more reason for Cyborg to sign with PFL and give up this weight cut. The Professional Fight League, PFL, is the only league right now that has a women's lightweight division. And they've got multiple girls that are actually too big for featherweight. These girls are too big for 145 pounds. Girls like Kayla Harrison, Josette Cotton, so they've never even made 145 pounds. So they have a legitimate lightweight division. Their lightweight division is more legitimate than the UFC's featherweight division. So if it was a weight cut thing, Cyborg would sign with the PFL. This is where we get into Cyborg's contract negotiations, because all indicators have been pointing toward Cyborg signing with Bellator. And I gotta say, man, if we're being real, if we're not being biased, that is the money move. You're not going there because you want to challenge. You're not going there because you want to defend your legacy. You're going there for money only. You're going there only because you want money. Because the girls in Bellator are not on Cyborg's level. None of them, not one, not the champion Julia Budd, none of them are on Cyborg's level. Meanwhile, in the UFC, you have Amanda Nunes. So, in order to, if you re-sign with the UFC, you have to really believe you can beat Amanda Nunes again. And if you did believe that, then you would take the money, you would beat Amanda Nunes, and you would renegotiate. But Cyborg is in a situation where it seems that she may be pricing herself out of the Amanda Nunes rematch. She wants a certain amount of money in her negotiations, and since she gambled on herself with her negotiation and didn't resign and she lost, when you do that, you get less money in your negotiations. If Cyborg would have beat Amanda Nunes and then renegotiated, she would have got a whole lot of money and she wouldn't be re-signing anywhere. But since she lost and she's not getting as much money as she wants, then now there's a lot of risk without as much reward. So you can go to Bellator and get a lot more reward and a lot less risk. So I broke it down into the three organizations. The UFC, you're not going to get as much money as you would like, clearly, from how negotiations are going, but that's where you can save your legacy. The UFC is the only place you can reclaim the throne as the greatest women's fighter of all time. The only way Cyborg can do that is by re-signing with the UFC and beating Amanda Nunes. So she can either re-sign with the UFC and prove she's the greatest female fighter of all time for what money they're willing to pay her, which, to be honest, it's not like Cyborg deserves Conor McGregor money. She's not half the draw. I mean, she might be one of the bigger female draws, but that doesn't mean you are a big draw in the grand scheme of things. You know, just because you're the biggest female draw doesn't mean you're a Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor type draw with Ronda Rousey gone. So with that being said, the UFC, what are they supposed to do? Just give her a huge contract just to fight girls? So every time Cyborg fights, she gets some lump sum, even though she's not the champion. She might never be the champion again. Are they supposed to just give Cyborg hundreds of thousands of dollars to fight girls like Megan Anderson? If you're not the champion, we can't pay you like a champion. And so the UFC's negotiating that, and Cyborg doesn't seem to be accepting that, which is that's fine. You're a free agent. So you can go to Bellator. Well, who knows if you're going to get as much money in Bellator, but you will have easier fights. You'll at least be able to win all your fights. Or you can go to PFL and you can have both, a challenge and money. There's three options. The UFC for the challenge. You're not going to get the money you want. You can go to Bellator for the money you want, but there's no challenge. Or you can go to PFL, where there's a lightweight division, there's a challenge in Kayla Harrison, and you can win $1 million if you can beat her. So the most logical place to go is PFL. It's to go there, try and beat Harrison, try and win $1 million. Other than that, man, Cyborg's in a situation. Do you want to go with the easy fights and the money, or do you want to try and regain your legacy? Because honestly, as of right now, people could make the argument Cyborg has been overrated. And I know Cyborg Nation would not want to hear that, and it sucks to say it, but just from what we've seen, when Cyborg has had her toughest fights, it is not a good look. When she was fighting bantamweight, she was knocking them out. No one was talking about her bad weight cut or nothing. Oh, Cyborg, she's the most feared woman ever, knocking out all these bantamweights. When it came to fighting Holly Holm the first time, took her to decision, it wasn't as dominant. When she fought Amanda Nunes, knocked her out, and Holly Holm's not even, I mean, people say Holly Holm's not even great. So Cyborg couldn't knock out Holly Holm, who people say is not great. And then she fights Felicia Spencer, another girl who's only 7-0. Felicia Spencer's only got 7 pro fights. She's not a striker, she's a grappler. And Cyborg can't knock her out, and she competes with Cyborg throughout the fight. Cyborg won a unanimous decision, but Felicia Spencer was landing shots. And she's not even a striker. That's Cyborg's game. And so, with that being said, she had knocked out by Nunes, and she had a competitive fight with a newcomer. You can't ask for too much money when you don't have momentum. Her stock is going down right now. Competitive fights with Felicia Spencer and getting knocked out faster than Ronda Rousey does not raise your stock. So you can either try and re-raise your stock in the UFC or just go take what Bellator is willing to offer and just take the easy money. We'll see what Cyborg does, man. This was interesting. This was an interesting fight to watch. I'm about to watch Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, man. The overtime killed me over this last week. I fell asleep when the pay-per-view started, man. I fell asleep during Olivier Albin Mercier and that Circurian guy. Yeah, man, 54 hours, something like that. So I'm watching the fights now. I'll give you guys my breakdowns and thoughts on it afterward. With that being said, man, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you think is next for Cris Cyborg and what you think about her competitive fight. Competitive, I don't know if that's the right word. It was way more competitive than people expected. People expected Cyborg to go in here and knock Felicia out and just get her out of there. And she ended up getting a big gash on her head, punched in her face a few times, and fighting to a unanimous decision. So Felicia Spencer was really competitive for what we expected. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out.